Tonight, we're following several developing stories as we come on the air. South Carolina completes a perfect season, beating Iowa and Caitlin Clark for the title. Plus, millions of Americans are getting set for a fleeting phenomenon courtesy of Mother Nature. First, all hail to the champs, South Carolina, the new national champions in women's college basketball. The Gamecocks just too strong, even with Clark scoring 30 points. Clark, the all-time leading scorer in college, captivating the nation with ticket prices soaring. The semifinals drawing the biggest basketball audience in ESPN's history. Her next stop, the WNBA. Fans already eagerly scooping up tickets to see her play. Also tonight, the final countdown to the solar eclipse. The latest forecast from our weather team on which cities have the best chance to see it. From Texas to Maine, millions on the move. A mad dash to get to prime viewing areas. Car rental companies redeploying personnel to handle the crush. Small business owners hoping to cash in. Some told to be ready to sleep in their stores. Team coverage of the eclipse across America. The major developments in the Middle East tonight, 6 months after the Hamas attack on Israel. The Israelis withdraw all of their ground troops from southern Gaza. Is this a first step toward a ground invasion of Rafah, which the Israelis say is the last Hamas stronghold? Iran issues a dire warning, appearing to threaten an attack on Israel's embassies. Frightening images. Southwest airline passengers capture the moment an engine cover ripped away during takeoff. The pilot declares an emergency and turns around. If you bought groceries at Walmart, you might be getting some money back. The retail giant is accused of overcharging customers. Walmart now has agreed to pay $45 million to settle a lawsuit while denying any wrongdoing. We have a winner. Someone is holding a Powerball ticket worth more than $1 billion. We'll tell you where it was sold. And some last-minute tips for watching and capturing the once-in-a-generation eclipse safely.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this busy Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. There is a lot to get to in these final hours before tomorrow's total eclipse. We have team coverage, including the forecast, the scary moments aboard a Southwest Airlines plane as an engine cover flies off. But we do begin with the battle on the hardwood. Just before we came on the air, the South Carolina Gamecocks were crowned national champions, defeating Caitlin Clark and Iowa. South Carolina overcame an early deficit to take home their third title in 7 years. It was a disappointing finish for Iowa guard Caitlin Clark's record-breaking college career. She's expected to be the first pick at next week's WNBA draft. But Clark is credited with igniting new interest in the women's game, changing it forever. ABC's Will Reeve leads us off tonight from Cleveland.
Tonight, South Carolina is perfect.
Perfection with a touch of sweet redemption.
The Gamecocks winning the women's NCAA basketball title over Caitlin Clark and Iowa in a thriller, 87-75.
Caitlin Clark says goodbye to college basketball.
It's South Carolina's second title in 3 years and third overall. Coach Dawn Staley's team, the 10th in history to achieve an undefeated season. Staley emotional postgame.
I'm so incredibly happy for our players. It doesn't always end like you want it to end, much like last year. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's unbelievable.
Iowa superstar Clark playing the final game of her singular collegiate career, scoring 30 points, starting off strong.
She has 18, the most ever in a championship game quarter.
But it wasn't enough to overcome the undefeated champions, South Carolina. She moves on as the all-time leading scorer and single-season three-point shooter in college basketball history, but without the crown jewel of a national championship. Clark's pursuit of greatness has helped bring unprecedented attention to the women's college game. Ticket sales for Iowa home games skyrocketing this year, as were the average prices for the Final Four showdowns earlier this week. But it's not just on the court where records are being broken. Iowa's Elite Eight victory over last year's champion LSU setting a ratings record, which was shattered just days later. The Hawkeyes' Final Four thriller over UConn, the most watched basketball game in ESPN's history. The previous record for an ESPN basketball broadcast was Game 7 of the 2018 NBA Eastern Conference Finals between the Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston Celtics. That captured just over 13.5 million viewers. But tonight, South Carolina celebrating as national champions once more. Clark will now enter next week's WNBA draft as the presumptive #1 pick, and the Caitlin Clark effect is already hitting the league. Ticket sales are up across the board. But Lindsay, one more game in this college season. Tomorrow night, it's the men's national title game. UConn against Purdue down in Phoenix. UConn has a chance to repeat. They'd be the first to do that since the University of Florida in 2007. Lindsay?
Will, thank you. Robin Roberts is in Cleveland, and we'll have much more on that game tomorrow morning on Good Morning America. All that basketball excitement, though, may soon be eclipsed by some celestial excitement as we are now in the final countdown to the solar eclipse. From small towns to big cities, Texas to Maine, more than 2,000 miles long, millions are preparing to witness the once-in-a-generation event in the U.S. that is now just hours away. Our team is spread out across the country tracking the preparations for the big event. We start with the question that so many are asking: will the weather cooperate, or will cloud coverage put a damper on it for some spectators? ABC meteorologist Samara Theodore joins us now from Indianapolis. All right, Samara, time this all out for us.
Lindsay, I'm here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway where folks are gearing up for the eclipse tomorrow afternoon. Let's follow this forecast along the path of totality. We'll start in Del Rio, Texas. From Del Rio to Dallas, we're anticipating a lot of cloud coverage, but fingers crossed we get some breaks in the cloud. Then we move to Russellville, Carbondale, Indianapolis, where we'll see improving conditions, mostly sunny by the afternoon, and a lot of clearing taking place through Cleveland. As we make our way to Niagara Falls, there we could see more mid-level to high-level clouds, with the best viewing conditions being in Burlington, Vermont, and Maine. Now, what will happen during the actual moment of totality? Well, temperatures will drop, and depending on your climate, anywhere from 5 to 15 degrees. Winds will also begin to grow much calmer. One thing I'd like to leave folks with is, if you are leaving the Texas region after the eclipse, be mindful. Severe weather will be moving through. We could see large hail, strong winds, and the threat for an isolated tornado. Lindsay?
All right, some good information there, Samara. Thank you. That forecast so crucial for the millions who are hitting the roads hoping to get the best view of the eclipse. Extra flights have been added, and officials are warning of high volumes of traffic on the nation's roads. ABC's Ike Ajachi joins us now from here in New York City, which is outside the path of totality. But Ike, it sounds like residents here will still have a pretty good vantage point.
That's right, Lindsay. All along the path of totality, officials want you to expect delays not only on the roads, but especially here in the air. Now, the FAA issuing a travel warning from tonight until Wednesday, anticipating a lot of traffic in the skies, not just for the eclipse, but also for spring break. They expect nearly 150,000 flights from today until Tuesday. Now, millions of people are expected to travel to see this event. According to Airbnb, 1 out of 4 guests with a reservation tonight have booked to stay along the path of totality. That spans over 2,000 miles, with Texas among the most booked states and Indianapolis representing the most booked city. Now, on the roads, expect no different. The DOT expects congestion and distracted driving on roads along that path of totality. Now, they're saying avoid traveling if you can, but if you happen to be on the roads, don't pull over to the side to take a look, and definitely look out for pedestrians. Lindsay?
Some great tips there, Ike. Thank you. And many of those millions Ike mentioned who are traveling are heading to some of the small towns along that path, places that are pulling out all the stops for the expected influx of visitors. Places like Waxahachie, Texas, population 45,000, where they are bracing for at least 100,000 guests. ABC's Rena Roy has more on the preparations underway from Niagara Falls, New York.
Tonight, the clock is ticking down to a historic moment across America. A total solar eclipse from Texas all the way to Maine, with 31 million people in the path of totality, more than 2,000 miles long across 15 states.
I don't think any of those will be as more excited than I am.
Small towns bracing for an influx of visitors. Waxahachie, just south of Dallas, Texas, expecting over 100,000 sky watchers.
They even told us to maybe be prepared to sleep in our store if we needed to. So on Monday, I'm thinking just because of traffic.
Hundreds of schools closed for the day or dismissing early. Some areas even declaring a state of emergency to keep traffic flowing and resources ready to go if needed.
We're going to see quite a bit of traffic trying to find that perfect spot. And we are advising motorists be prepared to be in traffic for quite a while.
Millions of eclipse chasers traveling near and far for a front row seat.
And so you woke up at 4:30 this morning.
Yep. Like retired teacher Rebecca Causey from Greensboro, North Carolina, my seatmate on our flight to the Buffalo Niagara Falls region today, who will be experiencing her second total eclipse.
Why do it for a second time?
It's magical, it's fun, educational.
Floridian Felix Renta also heading to the area.
Being in Totality is I don't know, it's indescribable.
Caitlin Kenny is traveling with her husband and 3-month-old son Jack.
And I think it's going to be pretty interesting, and especially for this little guy. So
in New York City, a long line of people hoping to get protective solar glasses, but some places running out.
And Niagara Falls here, as we know, certainly no stranger to tourists. But even local officials here are preparing to break records with about 1 million people expected. Hotels and businesses ramping up staffing. And also a statewide interagency task force has been preparing for the last 18 months for these massive crowds. Lindsay?
Something we won't see again here until 2044. Rena, thank you. And I'll be out there alongside David with unprecedented live coverage of the total solar eclipse, joined by Robin Roberts, Whit Johnson, and the entire team. Coverage of the eclipse begins on GMA tomorrow morning and then continues at 1 p.m. with the main event starting at 2 o'clock right here on ABC and all of our streaming platforms, ABC News Live, Nat Geo, Hulu, and Disney+. A scare aboard a Southwest Airlines jet taking off from Denver. Video taken from inside the plane shows the engine cover breaking away and shearing off the engine as the plane ascends. The pilots immediately declared an emergency and returned to the airport. Details now from ABC's Jacqueline Lee.
Tonight, the stunning moment part of the engine cover rips off a Southwest flight as frightened passengers look on. Watch again as the cover flails in the wind and tears right off.
Let's go ahead and declare an emergency for Southwest 3695, and we'd like an immediate return. We got a piece of the engine cowling hanging off, apparently.
The Houston-bound flight with 143 people on board, including 2 lap babies, forced to make an emergency landing Sunday morning. Here on the flight path, you can see the pilot suddenly loops back around, diverted back to Denver International Airport just after takeoff.
The seat that I was sitting in was right directly in front of that engine.
Lisa says she was on her way to witness the eclipse when she felt a jolt, looked out from her window seat and lit up the call button.
The flight attendant walked back, looked out my window and went, "Oh my God." There were a lot of people who were really quite nervous. Lots of, "Don't take off your seatbelts."
In a statement, Southwest Airlines saying it was a mechanical issue, and we're working now to get customers on their way to Houston on another aircraft. Our maintenance teams are reviewing the aircraft. As for Lisa, she's determined to see the eclipse in Little Rock, Arkansas.
I wanted to be in the path of totality. I think I made it. Hope we get there on time.
Lindsay, authorities say once the Boeing 737 landed in Denver, it was towed back to the gate. Passengers then boarded another flight to Houston where it safely landed. The FAA is leading the investigation. Lindsay?
Glad to hear everyone was safe there, Jacqueline. Thank you. Overseas now, today Israel announced that it was withdrawing some of its forces from southern Gaza, bringing its troop presence there to the lowest level since the war began 6 months ago today. The move is raising questions about when and if Israel will send ground forces into Rafah, where more than 1 million refugees have fled. ABC's Britt Clennett reports in tonight from Tel Aviv.
Tonight, Israel saying it's withdrawing ground troops from southern Gaza in preparation for future operations, including an expected ground offensive into Rafah. The war in Gaza continues, IDF Chief Herzi Halevi says, and we are far from stopping. The IDF officials telling ABC News some forces continue to operate in the Gaza Strip to preserve its freedom of action. Israel leaving the southern city of Khan Yunis after the IDF says Hamas ceased to exist as a military framework there. Residents today returning home to wreckage and devastation. It's a shock, one man says. The destruction is unbearable. Israel saying Rafah is Hamas's last major stronghold, but it's also where 1.3 million displaced Palestinians fled for safety from central and northern Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu facing mounting pressure abroad and at home.
For a second night, Israelis coming out in huge crowds demanding their hostages come home.
Anger inside Israel over those yet to be rescued hostages spilling out onto the streets. Israel also on high alert from imminent new threats from Iran, which has vowed to retaliate, blaming Israel for the deadly bombing of its consulate in Syria, which killed 7 Revolutionary Guard members, including a top commander. One Iranian military advisor quoted saying none of Israel's embassies are safe anymore. Speaking to ABC News, World Central Kitchen founder Jose Andres livid over what he believes was a targeted attack on a clearly marked convoy of aid workers on Monday.
Obviously, this was a targeted. We could argue that the first one, let's say, was a mistake. The second, the third.
Lindsay, the IDF says it's made grave mistakes and that the charity did coordinate with them beforehand. And we're being told an Israeli delegation is now in Cairo, along with Hamas representatives and CIA Director Bill Burns, to hammer out a hostage and ceasefire deal. Lindsay.
Britt, thank you. President Biden is under increasing pressure as the war drags on. Let's bring in ABC senior White House correspondent Selena Wang. And Selena, this announcement of the Israeli withdrawal that Britt mentioned comes in the wake of that phone call between President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Break this all down for us. What do we think is going on here?
Well, Lindsay, look, the White House is not confirming that those Israeli troops are preparing for a ground invasion of Rafah. The White House says that a ground invasion of Rafah would lead to humanitarian catastrophe. And the president, they've been urging the Israelis to take a more targeted approach. Now, this comes just days after that very tense phone call between Biden and Netanyahu. The president pressing Netanyahu to do more to protect civilians in Gaza, or else the U.S. will change its policy. But some House Democrats, they're pressuring Biden to go even further, saying that the U.S. should not send any more weapons to Israel after that strike that killed 7 of those humanitarian aid workers. Now, Israel has since then agreed to open new border crossings to allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza, but a senior White House official tells me that that may not be enough to meet the president's threshold. Lindsay?
All right, we will see soon enough. Selena, thank you. Now to the race for the White House. Former President Trump is far behind President Biden when it comes to fundraising, but Trump got a big boost this weekend. According to organizers, his campaign raked in a whopping $50 million at a Palm Beach fundraiser. Let's bring in ABC's Jay O'Brien from Washington. Jay, what more are you learning?
Lindsay, tonight a campaign official telling ABC News that at that exclusive fundraiser, former President Trump telling that group of ultra-wealthy donors that if he took office again, he would work to keep their taxes low by expanding his Trump-era tax cuts. The campaign saying that it raked in a whopping $50 million from this event. It was the Republican response to that massive Democratic fundraiser last week with President Biden and former Presidents Clinton and Obama that brought in an estimated $26 million, a record number for that party. Now, the Trump campaign is still trailing Democrats in their overall campaign cash, filing showing former President Trump using much of his campaign war chest to pay for his mounting legal bills. Lindsay.
All right, Jay O'Brien for us. Thanks so much, Jay. And there's still much more ahead on World News Tonight this Sunday. If you bought groceries at Walmart, you might be eligible to get some money back. And later, safety first, the best ways to watch the solar eclipse. Next tonight, a frightening sight for beachgoers in South Florida. A small helicopter went down just off Key Biscayne on Saturday afternoon. The pilot had reported engine trouble. Help arrived within minutes. Florida Fish and Wildlife personnel rescued the pilot, who was the only one on board and who suffered minor injuries. If you bought groceries at Walmart in recent years, the retail giant might owe you some cash. Walmart has agreed to pay $45 million to settle a class action lawsuit claiming it overcharged some customers for certain groceries bought in store. That's from October of 2018 to January of this year. Customers could be eligible to receive up to $500 if they kept receipts, or $10 to $25 without them. Walmart denies the allegations, but told to ABC News, "We believe a settlement is in the best interest of both parties." Still ahead, someone is holding a Powerball ticket worth more than $1 billion. We'll tell you where it was sold. To the index now. Saturday's Powerball drawing was delayed for several hours so lottery officials could complete security procedures. For one lucky ticket holder, it was certainly worth the wait. The lone winning ticket was sold in Portland, Oregon. The winner has not yet come forward. The jackpot was more than $1.3 billion. And when we come back, the best ways to watch and capture the solar eclipse and stay safe. Finally, tonight, some last-minute tips for watching tomorrow's solar eclipse safely. First and foremost, to avoid damaging your eyes, don't look directly at the sun without glasses approved by the American Astronomical Society. You may still be able to find them at drugstores or your local library. If that's not an option, our chief meteorologist Ginger Z can show you how you can easily make a pinhole projector to view the eclipse with your back to the sun. You'll need a cereal box, aluminum foil, and some tape. Her video is up on our website. Taking pictures will be tricky. You might not get the best resolution on your smartphone without using a filter. They're available at most photo stores. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.